What's going on, Bucs fans? Back here again with another episode of the Pirate Parlay podcast here on the Sick Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, JC Allen. We're flying solo today, but I got a bunch of guests lined up that we're going to be getting in here pretty soon. But we'll talk about my observations from OTAs. Just went to the second one. We got mandatory minicamp coming up. Somebody wasn't there, that's been causing a stir. We'll dive into that, and we'll look at this roster kind of as we come to mandatory minicamp and see where's the competition going to be the fiercest? Who's got an outside chance maybe of making? Obviously, all your comments too. And we'll get into all that right after the break.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to the Sick Podcast. Pirate Parlay.
Battle intercepted, picked off in the end zone. Bucs are going to beat the Chiefs. We're the champions of the world.
The sickest Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. It's going to be sick.
Welcome back to the other side again. A brand new episode here of the Pirate Parlay podcast on the Sick Podcast Network. As always, JC Allen, I'm your host. I want to shout out everyone who's watching right now on Twitter and YouTube. Appreciate you guys for being here. Go ahead, like, subscribe, turn notifications that way every time we go live. You guys will get notified. Everyone on Twitter, pop over to YouTube. Drop your questions, comments, anything you got going on. Christopher O'Reilly, I see you. Appreciate you being here. And then, of course, as always, to all my audio listeners, people who are listening to this afterwards who can't make the lives, appreciate you as well. We're cruising right along here, guys. We're in the beginning of June, just finished up May. We had rookie minicamp, OTAs week 1, OTAs week 2 is this week. Then we'll have mandatory minicamp next week. And then before you know it, training camp is about a month and a half away. And we're back to football. We'll have a Hall of Fame preseason game, a week and a half into training camp, and then a couple preseason games. And it's right around the corner, less than 100 days away till the Bucs play. More than that till the official start of the season. But this spring training is so crucial for not a lot of the young guys, right? Because mostly you've got a bunch of veterans coming back, but it's so crucial for the offensive side of the ball, really, just to kind of get clicking with Josh Grizzard, for Baker and Josh to get that tempo, the way he calls, the way he, under pressure when Bowles puts him in situations like that. What is he going to do, and how are they going to communicate? Not just how is Grizzard going to get the playoff to Baker and what kind of calls he's calling, but how is Baker going to communicate to him non-verbally on the sideline too? And, they've got a couple new pieces in there as well that they're working in with Emeka Egbuka, obviously the big one. Getting that timing down for them, just continuing to strengthen it and, get that chemistry. And he's already got that with a lot of guys he played with last year, but just to knock the rust off, essentially. You gotta work at it to get to Mike's favorite spot, catching the ball. You got to make those throws routinely to keep sharp for the regular season. So it's important for him in the offense, but it really is important for these rookies, these undrafted guys who are vying to make a team, and these young guys who are trying to crack a spot on the starting roster or just crack a spot on the roster. And so far, I've really liked what I've seen. Now, the trenches, you really can't say much about that. Same thing in the running game, but, you do notice David Walker. He missed this last OTA. He should be ready to go for mandatory minicamp next week, unless they want to really just play it safe for training camp. But even last week in rookie minicamp, he's so low to the ground. He's got such power. He's got good bend. He gets to the quarterback. And it's exciting to see that. But really, Jacob Parrish stood out during mandatory minicamp. Mandatory rookie minicamp. But it's been Benjamin Morrison recently who's been making some plays. He was in team drills on Tuesday, which is a great sign for him coming off of that hip surgery. They weren't sure if he'd be ready by training camp or not, and played it safe through rookie minicamp. Didn't see him OTAs. I didn't see him in teams, some individuals, but he was in teams and actually had a heck of a rep going up against, we got rookie on rookie crime, first round pick for a second round pick. Emeka Egbuka, man, he's got hops. He jumps up, tries to climb the ladder for the ball, but Morrison's right there with him to cause the pass breakup. And that's what you want to see, right? I mean, out of your picks, you got one guy who's coming in here and making pick sixes, and the other corner that you drafted is now going heads up against, the number 19 overall pick in the draft and winning those matchups. So it's good for those guys to continue to learn and continue to develop and get that experience playing with the ones. And I asked Todd about that because you're looking out there, all of a sudden you'll see Tyke Smith with some practice squad guys or undrafted rookies. And, same thing with Antoine Winfield Jr. And he's like, just the way we're stacked, guys are going to get these opportunities. And when they get these opportunities to play with the veterans, they just need to stoke up everything they can do. And not just on the practice field, but when you rewatch it back, just kind of watch the veterans and kind of see what they're doing and obviously emulate it. So, there's opportunity on this roster at certain spots. And it's going to be interesting to see that battle continue. As we saw Tristan Wirfs, he was not at OTAs. We saw Mike Evans was there. They put out some pictures and some videos of Mike Evans there, but we saw Tristan Wirfs there. He was not working out, but he did come over. The Bucs hosted their annual Cut for a Cause, Cut and Color for a Cause. So that's always a great thing. They're up over $800,000 raised now for that. But Tristan Wirfs came out for that, let the kids spray paint his hair. He had some great extensions in. There's some pictures floating around on X. Check those out. But so he's been there, chat with him a little bit. He's fine. He's not injured or anything like that. Some people don't want to work out when the media is there. Well, what can you do? You didn't say that, but I mean, it just kind of feels like that. But, it just shows that these guys, whether they're there or whether we're seeing them or not, they're there. Like, we haven't seen Mike, but he's been there. We haven't seen Tristan on the field, but we know he's been there. Hassan Reddick is a guy who's got everybody in a panic right now. And I think it's PTSD last year from Randy Gregory not showing up. But I've talked to guys on the team, and they've had communication with Hassan Reddick. Todd Bowles reiterated again that he's working out. Larry Foote is keeping in touch with him. He fully expects him to be here for mandatory minicamp. And I don't see any reason to question that until, he's not there, if he's not there. But I don't think he's going to be. I just think he's one of these guys, and you go back and you look, and, with time with the Eagles and time with, the Panthers, that he skipped OTAs, and they're voluntary, but he has been there in the facility. It's not like he hasn't been there at all. He has been there. He has been talking to coaches and teammates, and he's just working out on his own. Some guys like to do that. Some guys do both. Some guys work out on their own with their trainer, and some guys still come to the OTAs and the voluntary stuff, and they do all that and the off-season work just to get as much work in as they can. This is the time for you to get better. This is the time for you to protect those, perfect and make progress on those little things, because during the game week you're worrying about installs and stuff like that. So a lot of guys are putting a lot of work in. Hassan Reddick is one of those guys, just hasn't been during media visual availability during OTAs. But again, mandatory minicamp is next week. I can't wait for him to show up and put this whole situation to bed because I do strongly feel that he will be there. But Christopher O'Reilly says, I'm so nervous about injuries. Parham tore his Achilles already, and it's only OTAs. Yeah, I did see that. It's the risk you run when, you're trying to get better. I mean, you can get injured in a variety of different ways. There's been guys who've gotten injured in the shower and stuff like that. Like, it's the risk you run to get better. I was having a conversation with one of the media guys, and it was like, we were talking, and someone stepped on Antoine Winfield, and he came off the field for a play, and I was like, that's why you don't do this stuff in OTAs. And then he ran right back on the field, and the very next play was that play with Abuka and Benjamin Morrison, and Abuka came down, kind of funny. We were all like, and that's why you don't do this stuff in OTAs. Why you don't do team stuff. But he just got the wind knocked out of him. He came back a couple plays later. It would have been a sack, but still was a 30-yard bomb connection from Baker to Abuka for a touchdown. Winfield did give up a little bit when the whistle was blown, but still, yeah, it just shows that he was fine. Just probably got that wind knocked out of him. But those are the risks you run, I mean, anywhere, training camp, what was it, the first day of training camp with Ryan Jensen and pads, the second day or third day of Sue Opeta last year, torn ACL. It's part of the game. It's part of the game. I hope the Bucs will be a healthier team, because if they are a healthier team, I really see them making a lot of noise, and people are overlooking them now. You look around; they've got the Falcons, they've got the Panthers winning the division over the Bucs. But if they can stay healthy, I think they've got the team to do so. And speaking of that, kind of looking at this team as a whole, when you look at where the team is the most deep, and this was something we talked with Todd Bowles about. He said that the wide receiver position, which is one that he thinks is the deepest rooms on his team. He also said defensively, he mentioned the running back room as well. He said defensively, he really likes the depth of the inside linebacker room, and there's a lot of competition at cornerback. So let's jump into those two kind of position groups right there on offense first. Running back, the Bucs are stacked. They've got Bucky Irving, obviously. Phenom came on last year. Rashad White is probably the best pass blocking back, maybe the best receiving back. And Sean Tucker's got tons of untapped potential. Remember, he only went undrafted because of the heart issue. A lot of people had a second. A lot of people had a early day 3 grade on him, but some people had a second, third round grade on him. But he wasn't projected to get out of the 4th round, and if it was, early 5th at least. So wide range of outcomes there, obviously, and he ended up going undrafted. But there's a lot of, and I think he's probably the best pure, just like running back, like hit the hole and go type guy. He's probably your fastest back as well on the roster. And then you've got guys like DJ Williams and Josh Williams. Josh Williams, undrafted free agent from LSU. DJ Williams was undrafted free agent last year. I talked to the running back coach there, Skip Pete, and we were like, I figured maybe you guys would want like a bruiser back. And he's like, well, if I got a bruiser, that's someone that, we got DJ Williams. He's a little bit more built like that. So, they do like him a lot. They're going to give this kid Josh Williams a lookie too. But if you notice, it's a position that they really didn't bring in a lot of competition for. Just one back. That was it, and that's for the practice squad role. Like, you're battling DJ Williams. The other position that they did before I get into wide receiver, tight end. They tried to bring some guy in after undrafted free agent, but he decided yeah, I'm going to be an accountant. Football stuff. NFL's not for me. Not doing this. After rookie minicamp, he was done. Did not come back. So they're really just kind of at the status quo. They got Tanner Taulo, who's been in the practice squad the last 2 seasons. Then they got Cole Keefe, Devin Culp, Payne Durham, and Cade Otten. That's it. There's no new addition to that, especially no new addition that's really competing for anything. The offensive line, they brought in some back-end competition. Obviously, they brought in Charlie Heck and stuff like that. They kept continuity. But that back of the roster offensive line competition is always there, depending on who it is. There's Brandon Walton, Nick Leverett, like Aaron Stinney, like all these guys are, that's what it is. That you churn that bottom of the roster on offensive line usually because you're trying to find that, undrafted hidden gem or late round hidden gem. And that'll be a competition to watch too, because I think there's at least 1 or 2 spots when you look at the returning 5, obviously, with Tristan, Luke, Graham, Ben, and Cody. Those guys are sticking around. Charlie Heck, you signed. He's going to be a guy there that can play swing tackle. So there's 6 for you right there who are locks. And then I think you got Sue Opeta and Elijah Klein. They really like Elijah Klein, his ability to play all 3 interior spots. You're already up to 6, 7, 8. Now, do they keep 10 or they keep 9? I think it will depend on the flexibility of that player. But they've got a bunch of guys that they like there. Luke Haggard, Silas Zanzi, Raekwon O'Neal. They've all been here for a while, a couple years now. O'Neal left and came back, but he's been around. They've got guys who they just brought in, Jake Majors, Ben Scott, Ben Chukwuma. Who's that super raw guy that they paid a ton of money to, and Jake Majors got a big substantial guarantee too, and like $260,000. I think Chukwuma got like $300K. So they've got guys there who they like, who've been around for a little bit, and then they've got these new guys, and 1 or 2 of those spots is going to come down to it. I wonder if they want to try to develop a tackle because they only have Heck for 1 year, where Klein is still under contract for 2 years as an interior guy. So to me, I'm really looking at that Silas Danzi Chukwuma type battle to see, do they keep an extra tackle on there? Otherwise, that center spot, I know they like Elijah Klein there, but Jake Majors played a ton of center. Ben Scott as well for Nebraska, both veterans. And they're both getting looks at guard too. So it'll be interesting. Ben Scott's getting more looks at guard than Majors. Majors is pretty much functioning as their number, with Klein out, their number 2 center. So because Klein was off to the side this practice, and he wasn't there the first practice either. So, he's working at center number 2. So he's got a huge advantage already on that. And quarterback is what quarterback is. But wide receiver is going to be really interesting. Actually, I won't gloss over quarterback. Quarterback's going to be interesting because they technically keep 2 quarterbacks on the roster. I don't think they're going to keep 3. And Kyle Trask is obviously the incumbent. He was just in a battle with Baker, and they really like him and they really trust him. But they got him on a cheap deal, some magicianry that Greenberg pulled out of his hat on that contract. They're paying him like $700,000 on a $200 or on a $2 million. It's crazy. Whatever it is, it's crazy, and it's used, but it's not like publicly like out there like, oh, they did it again. So they really do like him, but they like Michael Pratt a lot too. And it'll be interesting who Michael Pratt hasn't practiced yet. That we've seen. He's been out for those practices, giving Connor Bazelak, the undrafted free agent, giving him a lot of opportunity to show what he can do. But they do really like Pratt, and it will be interesting to see if they do some sort of maneuvering to try to avoid Pratt from going on the waivers, at least initially. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how they do that because I don't think they want to lose Pratt. I think they think he'd be a really good backup to Baker. So, especially with Trask, I just don't think they felt he was ready yet. But another season, I think they'll be ready to say bye to Trask and have him stick around as the backup. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out, because that is something to kind of watch. Unless Pratt just balls out and beats Trask out, But I don't expect them to keep 3, although I think they like all 3 a substantial amount. But wide receiver, we know the top 4 are locked in. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Jalen McMillan, and the newly drafted Emeka Ibuka are all locked in at number 4. It really comes interesting, and I was talking about this with some of the local beat writers, the guys everyone that you guys know, and we were talking about, is there a world where they only keep 5 wide receivers on the active roster because of how deep they feel like they are now, or is it still kind of 6? I think they opened up with 5 like 2 years ago, maybe. Or maybe it was even last year they opened up with 5. I'm not sure. Or I think maybe because Raheem Jarrett was on IR or whatnot. But, that battle for those final 1 to 2 spots is going to be really crazy. Tez Johnson versus Trey Palmer versus Cam Johnson is going to be something to really watch. And kind of Sterling Shepard, Raheem Jarrett, I could say Dennis Houston, but I don't think he's really like in the mix. Ryan Miller, like those 3 guys, it's going to be interesting to watch those groups of wide receivers because they provide different things, really. Like Cam Johnson, Tez Johnson, kind of your quick twitch guys. Use them on end arounds. Cam Johnson was used on a bunch of end arounds at practice the other day. Like you can use those guys on that. Punt returners, good start-stop, ability, kind of electric in space type guys that can really kind of make people miss and stuff. And they've been looking for that for a long time. You go back to kind of Scotty Miller trying to use him in that role, Devin Tompkins. Then obviously Cam Johnson last year. Now they get Tez Johnson, looking for this shifty gadget guy that they can use and deploy in certain looks, or have teams think that they're going to use him for certain looks. But he also reeled in a 30-yard bomb on Tuesday, and Tyke Smith was in coverage. There was one player, man, he had Josh Hayes in a blender. Like, it's crazy. He just releases off the line, does like a hoo, and like Josh Hayes is still picking his cleats up off the ground while he's already 5 yards inside after just faking him out. It was but like he's good, man. He's got that ability to just ba. But they're looking for that guy. And I think Tez Johnson, you drafted him. These guys are undrafted. It gives him a bit of a leg up, maybe. But he's got a lot to prove. It's not given to him. Just because he's a fun personality doesn't mean he's going to. Shiloh Sanders is a fun personality. I'll get to him in a minute. Doesn't mean that he's going to make this roster. He's got to show it in the football field. But I think, that's like general his competition is Tez Johnson and, to a lesser extent, Trey Palmer for the punt return position, 100% Trey Palmer, but they do different things on the field. Palmer's more of a straight line kind of. He's got good speed in a straight line, and his stop, start, shift ability is kind of really not his forte. Where it is Tez Johnson's, and that's how he creates a separation a lot of the times. But Trey was in some fake rumors out there that the Steelers were interested in him, and a lot of people were like, "All right, see you later." And part of that is like he was given opportunities last year. Like guys were out. And he just didn't step up. Ryan Miller stepped up. Sterling Shepard stepped up. These are guys who Ryan Miller still doesn't have to love, but everyone loves Sterling Shepard. Forget about some of his big drops he had. But because of some of the games that he did step up, a lot of people are like, he's Baker's friend. Keep Baker happy at all costs. It's going to be interesting to see, because he's had opportunities and hasn't lived up to it. And they didn't really spend a high draft pick on him. He's a 6th-round pick. So if he doesn't work out, he doesn't work out. But Rakim Jarrett, undrafted free agent. A lot of people thought he should have been drafted. People thought Palmer should have been drafted higher in the 4th round. Jarrett was probably like a 6th-round pick. Both of those guys fall beyond where they wanted to or expected to go. Jarrett just hasn't been able to stay healthy. He's had some good plays when he's been on the field. He just hasn't been able to stay on the field. And you can't make the club from the tub. And when they're bringing in guys who try to make the team and battle for the bottom of the roster, you've got to do everything in your power to be on the field. So, those two guys, Trey Palmer and Rakim Jarrett, have a lot riding in on this camp because it's unlikely that both of them make this team, at least on the 53-man roster. It's funny, too, because I didn't see Jalen McMillan participating in special teams, and usually he does. And, Mike and Chris don't. Abuka is going to be over there as a punt returner, getting reps and trying to, in that battle. But, if he's not playing special teams, Mike and Chris aren't playing special teams, and Sterling Shepard ain't playing special teams, we can have Abuka, who's just going to do punt return, maybe, or Tez Johnson, who's just a punt return, really. Maybe. You're not going to have Tez Johnson out there on tackle, trying to tackle, running backs a kickoff game or something like that. So you could, but I don't know. So where are your special teamers coming from the wide receiver position? But again, then you look at talent, Ryan Miller blocks his ass off. Bantry sense that wide receiver 6 and lower depends on who can block. Ryan Miller blocks his ass off, and he made some really good plays last year for being Ryan Miller, who was a former tight end at Furman University, things that you probably didn't know. He made some plays for them. But again, you look at talent, and when you're talking about day 3, especially late day 3, round 6 and on, and undrafted guys, it's all right, you've got some traits. Can you develop everything else? Can you develop those traits to be a useful player? And so far, none of those guys have really showed themselves separated themselves from anybody else that they've brought in there. The Kalen Geiger's in here, and whoever else you remember, practice squad wide receivers that were around that, John Franklin III, and these guys that people were excited about, so it's going to be interesting to see the way they feel. I think in a perfect world, they probably have Shep and Tez Johnson there. And hopefully maybe they get some capital for Trey Palmer, 2027, 6th round, 7th round pick, conditional, something to get for Trey Palmer. And then, when you round out your practice squad, maybe you're looking at Rakim Jarrett, Cam Johnson, and Ryan Miller. I think there you go. Those are your 3 wide receivers on the practice squad. They all give you a little bit of different. Cam Johnson, he's more of that shifty guy, punt returner. Rakim Jarrett's more of that classic, possession receiver. Ryan Miller can block, play a little special teams, be a little bit of possession receiver. It'll be interesting to see how that all works out there with that final 1 to 2 wide receiver position. So before we jump on the defensive side, LDBC's most wanted said, do you think the 2025 roster is better than the 2024? Yeah, I straight up do. I think they've improved their depth tremendously at places that need it. They didn't really lose anybody that was uber important to this team, or or played a huge role on this team. They've improved their punting position, but when you look at it, okay, quarterback status quo, running back status quo, wide receiver, you added one of the best wide receivers in the draft, guy who's going to be steady, consistent playmaker for you for the next 10 years, if you sign him. Tight end status quo, offensive line. You lost Justin School. That's the one guy, probably Justin School. I probably would have liked to see them retain Justin School over Charlie Heck, but we'll see. Let's see what Charlie Heck has to do. You brought in a bunch of undrafted free agents and low-level guys to compete. You brought back Suapeta, solid move right there. And then you brought in a bunch of undrafted guys to compete with your practice squad guys from a year ago to fill out that 9-10 spot on the roster. Love it. You look at defensive line, and we'll get into more comprehensive breakdown, but you didn't really lose much here. William Golson, time to retire. He's probably going to do so. He was more of that Udonis Haslem role last year on the defensive line room. Didn't get worse here. Probably got better with the addition of Elijah Roberts. Talk about that more. Outside linebacker definitely got better. You lost JTS, which, a great all-around player. Not the pressure guy you wanted. That's just the way it is. But you got Hassan Reddick. You brought in David Walker. You're good there. Linebacker, Rossi Dennis, it's on you, dog. You're going to be healthy? Because, it's on you. But they did bring the room up with Anthony Walker, who started meaningful games in the league, unlike KJ Britt. Happy birthday to KJ Britt. But, again, he wasn't, he got some late starts at the end of the season. Wasn't really a polished guy as far as Anthony Walker. So, upgrade in depth right there. Deion Jones is making freak interceptions in OTAs. I think it was probably one of the best interceptions I've ever seen in my life. Definitely in practice, but it may have been. I told the Bucs social media team, Jill, I told her, you need to get that up there. You need to find and get it up there. They have that video somewhere because I don't even know how to explain it to you. He was playing the ball. He tipped it up and then he spun around and caught the ball behind him. It was crazy. It was crazy. It was in a no recording, but crazy. Then they have Antonio Greer Jr. there. So again, a little bit deeper. Jones didn't join until late. He did a good job in that Washington game, obviously making plays in practice. He's a veteran. Everyone remembers him from the 2019 season. Pick 6 to end the season, and Jameis Winston and bring in Tom Brady. So Deion Jones, a lot of love for him if you're Tampa Bay, I bet. And you want to see him do well. Cornerback, you drafted 2. Safety, didn't do much here. I don't think you lose much without Jordan Woodhead. I almost called him Jordan Whitehead because he just didn't play great last year. And he was banged up and everyone was banged up, but it just wasn't the guy that we came in here boasting about interceptions and still having that heat-seeking missile kind of ability, and it was never there. But again, there was a lot of injuries and communication. You really can't play the way you want to play when you've got a young guy at safety that is not Antoine Winfield Jr., who can literally chase people down from across the field to the 1-yard line and make plays, and some plays that don't get called that are still plays. Whatever. But yeah, so they're deep. They're much deeper. And the offense, I just kind of went over it. I think they're better there. Again, Justin School might be the one thing I'd change. Defense, a lot of people wanted them to trade Dean and draft and sign a cornerback high. I really like what they did. I'm kind of glad they didn't do that because now they have Dean still, who, when playing, closer to the line of scrimmage, does some of his best work. He's never going to be a ball hawk, but does some of his best work. And he's in year 3 of his deal. Next year, he becomes very attractive because the contract price is much cheaper. And if he can stay healthy and put together a solid year, and then you have Benjamin Morrison ready to take over, waiting in the wings, and a cornerback group of Morrison, Parrish, and Zion doesn't seem so bad when you've got Tyke Smith and Antoine Winfield there too. So I think they set themselves up for the best this season. Plus, they still got all their draft picks next year. and they'll have some cap space to dabble and add to it too. But on the defensive side of the ball, it's going to be interesting. At cornerback is the biggest one, and safety. Really, that whole defensive back room. And again, we're having this conversation is what do they do? Because typically they keep 6 cornerbacks, they keep 4 safeties, but you've got these hybrid guys, and you've got like 4 of them. So, like, where do you really count them? Because they're cross trained. They want everybody to just be able to do whatever and just play. Obviously, not to the best ability. You're not going to put like Tyke Smith on Jay Jetta because you want to disguise a look. But, to an extent, they want to be able to have these guys move around and be able to drop into the right spots that they need to, especially in zone coverage from different angles and different areas that confuse the quarterback. So, when you look at the cornerback room specifically, they are like 7, 8, 9 deep there. It starts with Jamel Dean and Zion because they're the starting leftovers. You got Benjamin Morrison. We want to split this up to outside corners and inside corners. That's where it gets all muddy. So I'm just going to call it is what it is. I'm going to call Jacob Parrish just a cornerback. Then you got Kendall Valdor, you got Bryce Hall, you got Tyreek Funderburk, and you've got Josh Hayes and Roman Parody. So there's like 6, 7 bodies there in itself. How that all shakes out. Actually, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 9 guys there. So you've got pretty much 5 guys for the last 2 spots. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Do they go with a veteran like Bryce Hall or Kendall Vildor? Do they prefer, even though he wasn't a great special teamer, but do they prefer a guy like Josh Hayes on special teams? Do they want to keep developing Tyreek Funderburk? There's Roman Parody, who had a really nice pass breakup on Jalen McMillan at OTAs the other day. Does he make enough plays in training camp to stand out? So they've got essentially 5 guys for 3 spots that aren't locked in, and it's going to be interesting to see how they go about filling it because, again, on the safety spot, you've got Antoine Winfield, Tyke Smith, and now let's call Christian Izzy in a safety, even though he can play nickel just like the other 2 guys can. Let's call him a safety. Now you've got that one spot there. And Kayvon Merriweather probably has the best chance to grab it, but Shiloh Sanders, obviously, got a lot of fanfare out there because of who his dad is. JJ Roberts, who I really like a lot out of Marshall. And then the holdover guys and Rashad Wisdom and Marcus Banks, who have been here for a year. So, you've got essentially 5 guys for 1 spot and 5 guys for 2 spots. And how they figure that all out is going to be interesting because, do they break it up into 3 different positions, right? And then if they do, then how do you count Tyke or how do you count Christian? And what does that mean? Like, how many outside corners do you want? Do you want 4 outside corners? Okay, so then we need 2 inside. Okay, so then we need what? 3 safeties, 4 safeties, and how they all figure that out to break down the roster to what they want. That's going to be one of the more interesting, I think, things to watch in camp, because if they say, hey, we're good with 5 cornerbacks, like we're good, we've got our top 4 guys and then we've got Bryce Hall. We feel good with 5 corners. So maybe they carry a 5th safety, maybe they're like, all right, we want Kayvon Merriweather, but man, Shiloh Sanders has shown a lot. We can't cut him. So we're going to keep him. Or maybe it's JJ Roberts, like who's played outside corner, nickel corner, and safety all in college. Maybe it's someone like him. And they're like, okay, well, if we have him, yeah, technically we're training him at safety, but we know he can play a little bit everywhere. Again, it's all that versatility. What can you do for me? If guys can play safety and nickel or safety and perimeter, which is rare or whatever, like that's who's going to end up winning that spot, whether it be labeled as a safety or corner. It's going to be really interesting to see. And of course, special teams is going to be a huge factor because if you look at the wide receiver core, the top 4 guys, unless one's doing punt return, they're not going to be on special teams. You're going to need them coming, those fast, speedy guys to be coming from your corner room. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. They've got a bunch of rookies who obviously have a lot less snaps in their NFL career that they'll put on special teams a bunch. But that to me is the most interesting room of all. I think everything else is pretty much cut and dry. Basically maybe 1 spot, and like, is it a battle? Barely. Really does does it matter as much? I don't know. Linebacker will start right there. Obviously, your top three are set. Servacio Dennis hit the mic yesterday. He is ready to go. I always think it's so funny with Servacio Dennis that everyone's like, man, KJ Britt, especially last year, KJ Britt, we need Servacio Dennis out there. He's so much better in coverage. But then that was the biggest question everyone had coming out. Like, is this guy going to be any good at coverage? Like, he got 9 sacks last year. Is he just another guy? Is he just another Devin White, a fast linebacker who can sack the quarterback? And now everyone's like, oh, thank God, Servacio, we got the coverage back. Yeah. And like, he's been just making plays. Todd Bowles said he's been the MVP. If you want to call him the MVP of the first 4 days, call him it, whatever. He's been the standout player. And, I'm happy for him that he's, got his shoulder injury behind him, from college or whatever. And, he feels good. I speaking to him, before, like, he felt he could have came back for that playoff game. The Bucs just didn't want to rush anything back. So he just kind of made sure he was 100% with his rehab. And now he's coming back now. And the Bucs have said nothing but he's our guy. And he's going to get every opportunity in the world to prove that he's the guy. If he can be the guy, then the Bucs are set for now, because Levante is probably done. So they don't just want him to be, they need him to be the guy. I spoke to Levante on this podcast last year, and he assured me that Servacio Dennis is the guy. One of the smartest guys he's been around, one of the hardest workers he's been around, and that he thinks that he can take over for Levante when he's done. And I asked Servacio about that, and he's like, it means a lot from a guy who's seen a lot of ball, played a lot of ball, been with a lot of players. It means a lot, not only from him, but a guy like that who says, hey, he can have the keys when I'm done playing here. That just means a lot, because anytime anyone says that, it's just like, thank you. Like, like, I can't believe it. Like, thank you. I can't believe you're saying that, is what he was like expressing there. So yeah, he's got a lot riding on him. He's aware of the expectations, and I think he'll ball out. But I mean, I can't lie to you. I thought KJ would be much better. I championed him here after having him on the podcast, and just how much of a football player he was. Just, couldn't over. And I think he'd be much better if just he was blessed with a little bit more speed, because he's a very smart and instinctive linebacker who can get to the hole quick when it's close. Knows where the hole is, no matter where it is, to make the play. It is what it is. But no, I really think Servacio is going to be able to hold that position down. But looking at the depth, in case he can, again, mentioned Anthony Walker. He's got like 90-something starts over his career. Was a bit banged up last year with the Dolphins, but generally turned in good coverage grades, and that's really where the Bucs have struggled. Levante David even lost a step a little bit in coverage last year. He's not going to be the Travis Kelce eraser he was back in 2020. He can still, he's still going to do well in coverage. He's not going to be a total liability at all, but, he is getting a little bit up there, and it is showing a little bit. And Anthony Walker has been a guy who has shown that he can handle the coverage responsibilities at a high level. So they've got themselves, instead of having just, a guy like JJ Russell, who is the next man up last year after Voss went down behind KJ Britt, they put themselves in a situation where they have a guy who has been a starter in this league, knows what it takes, has worn the green dot, communicator. He's also really close with Levante, so that helps. And so far, he's been a communicator on the field. He's been a shit talker on the field. Whenever the defense makes a play, you can always hear Anthony Walker. So he's picked up for KJ Britt where that has been. I have to say, I do miss coming out to practice and hearing KJ chirp at Big Mayfield. It used to go back and forth all the time. But Walker's picked up in his place. They got Antonio Greer Jr., who was here last year as well, had some stints on the active roster, was called up a few times. I think he maybe got one snap. The other ones were special team snaps, but a guy who's been in the system, a guy they like, showed out during training camp, rookie minicamp last year, OTAs, made some big plays. Then they got a couple unknown guys, and Nick Jackson, linebacker out of Nebraska, I want to say, or John Bullock's out of Nebraska. Nick Jackson's out of, I still want to say it's another one of these like Midwest type middle of nowhere schools that's escaping me right now. I could be wrong. I don't know. Nick Jackson, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, not Nick Jackson, professional wrestler. I don't need that one. Although that is happening at 8:00 if you're an AEW fan. He's from Iowa. Yeah, so told you, one of those corn husker, corn-fed farm, middle of nowhere Midwest towns. He's from Iowa. Both those guys super productive in college, like just racking up tackles. Very smart, very extinguished, very instinctive linebackers, but not the fastest. Speed isn't going to wow you, but guys who can play, be solid for you on special teams, and provide, some punch in a pack. You need some, you're going up against a team like the Eagles who likes to run a lot or whatever, or a team that's mostly a ground and pound type deal. You give you a good 1-2 downs, early downs, stuff in the run down there. They've got some ability in coverage too, but nothing that you write home about. But both of those guys will have an opportunity. I don't think Deion Jones has that fourth spot locked down behind Anthony Walker because he is penciled in there. These veterans, you're always looking to kind of get younger, develop guys. And if they see something that, all right, Deion Jones is here, rookie's here, but we think the rookie can get here, and he's linebacker 4, like they'll go over that potential, over that experience most of the time. And Deion Jones was on the practice squad last year. Again, like when we're breaking down these positions, kind of going through them, like don't forget, veterans can go on the practice squad. So if they wanted to keep Trey Palmer and Tez Johnson, just throwing 2 names out of that list, and Sterling Shepard's like, I'll go on the practice squad, whatever. Like then you keep Sterling Shepard on the practice squad. Like they can do that. You can do a lot of things like that. So that could happen there. We'll see. Outside linebacker is pretty cut and dry. They've got like 6 guys or 7 guys. They'll probably keep 5. When you look at the roster, it is stacked pretty much Yaya Diaby, Hassan Reddick, 1, 2. And then I'm sure they'd like David Walker, but Anthony Nelson with Hassan Reddick was getting the number 1 snaps across from Yaya Diaby out in OTAs. Now, that doesn't mean anything really. But it does mean that maybe they're trying to keep Braswell in that, he's going to be the number 2 rotation. So keep him in that number 2 rotation because he wasn't the one called up. So I don't know. We'll kind of see how that plays out, how that goes. But Yaya Diaby, Hassan Reddick, probably phase 1. Anthony Nelson, Chris Braswell, phase 2. Whether it's Anthony Nelson, David Walker earns that spot. It'll be interesting to see how that turns out. Obviously, Anthony Nelson will still get plenty of snaps, steady Eddie. But if they want to give the young kid a shot, maybe that's the pairing you go with. And then you have more like similar body styles too, like Chris Braswell, Yaya. They're kind of similar in the way that they rush. Not completely, but same thing with Hassan Reddick and David Walker. If you have those 2 as your second wave after your first wave, you're throwing similar body types at them. With a smaller, speedier rusher, still with power, and then 2 bigger, powerful guys with Diaby and Braswell. So maybe that pushes Nelson to that kind of like extra snaps, third wave. We know he's going to play a ton of special team snaps. I think he led the team or was pretty high up there. He was playing up to like 20 snaps a game at one point. And then it really comes down. Warren Peebles is a guy they signed. Can't body, no shot, in my opinion. Hope you are well. It's Jose Ramirez and Marquise Watts, right? So you've got your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you keep 6, it's who do you keep over Ramirez or Watts? They've said good things about both of them. Both of them are out there practicing. I saw Watts out there the other day. They drafted Jose Ramirez in the 7th. Watts was undrafted, so pretty much a wash in terms of compensation, what it's going to cost you. That 7th was 2 years ago, so it's long gone anyways. It'll be interesting to watch that competition. If there is a competition, maybe they feel good with 5. Maybe that's how it goes. But that competition there for the 6th spot will be fun to watch. And then the defensive line is pretty much set too. Like not a lot going there. Logan Hall, Vita Vea, Kalijah Cansey. Those are your starting 3. Greg Gaines, CJ Brewer, Elijah Roberts. That's it. Roberts is safe, 5th round draft pick. Greg Gaines is safe. They just re-signed him. CJ Brewer, they just re-signed him. I think if you want to break down a battle, maybe you're talking about definitely for practice squad. But Mike Green, like he was on the active roster, made the team as a tryout player, spent a year in the practice squad, then was on the active roster, then was on the practice squad last year. Like they didn't elevate him. I think maybe just one game, maybe they did out of necessity. But it's not like they're like, all right, we got to keep this guy around. How can we get him on the active roster? Where CJ Brewer was on the active roster. I think those are your 6. Desmond Watson, Adam Gotsis. Gotsis was a former 4th-round pick, I think, for the Cardinals or something like that. So he's got a little bit of talent upside, I guess, if you'd say, over Mike Green, or trait upside, Desmond Watson and Nash Hutchmaker. But I just don't see a world where Desmond Watson isn't on the practice squad. To continue, not just to develop him as a football player, but help him as a person. Just keep him with, because I think he can be helpful as a football player. But I mean, just keeping him on that track of, the last thing you want to do is send him down a hole because you got cut. And, you want to make sure you're keeping this guy healthy, keeping him on the right track. And I think he'd provide a lot on the practice squad. So, but really, I don't think there's anything, unless they only keep 5, and then it comes down to Roberts and Brewer. Roberts, you spent capital on. Brewer, you didn't, but I think they probably keep 6 there. Vita Vea hasn't been at OTAs. Greg Gaines hasn't been at OTAs. Fully expect both of those guys there. Maybe outside chances of punter competition. Jake Julian was a CFL All-Star. They did sign Riley Dixon, although it wasn't a huge deal, so I don't know the outs of it either, but they probably have to eat a little bit of that. Jason McLaughlin is your kicker, and then your long snappers, Evan Deckers, and that's the Bucs roster. Going into mandatory minicamp, and how I kind of feel about it. I think they're in a really good spot. Couple areas I could see them at. It's funny because Bowles just said that linebackers, he thinks, is one of the deepest spots. I think they can improve there. There's really not much out there now, but we are past June 1st. We'll do mandatory minicamp, and then there's usually a couple cuts and a couple moves be right before training camp, early week 1 into training camp. Guys become available. Safety is another position that we talked about. They've got one guy really in Antoine Winfield Jr., Kayvon Merriweather, that has NFL experience playing safety, like playing safety as a safety. Isian's played it. Tyke's played it a little bit. But they don't have much after that. And if they want to upgrade that spot on the roster, there's a ton of good safeties still available. Justin Simmons, one of the most notable ones out there. So, I mean, that's a spot to watch. I think they're set on offensive line and wide receiver, obviously. Tight end, I don't think there's going to be anyone of substance that would make them want to move Keith or Devin Culp off the roster. Quarterback, same. Running back, same. Defensive line, same. Edge rush. I think linebacker, safety are the 2 spots to watch if they do add to this team. Safety being the one I think they'll have a pretty good idea, but they do like these young guys. So I don't know. It's going to be fun to watch. And this is when everyone's going to be there. So you get to see everybody in action. And then the coaches will, put together what they want to do for training camp, and we'll see quick enough in training camp. They always make a move the first week or so, of training camp and bring someone else in and cut someone else off the roster. We'll see what they think of these guys, especially when the pads start coming in and the guys get to start hitting. So it'll be interesting. I'm super excited. We get this dead period. I'll be doing a couple different things. The podcast will be having a bunch of players, maybe some coaches and stuff like that. As far as writing, I'll be doing, I'm going to start going around the NFC South and kind of ranking where the Bucs land as far as quarterback, wide receivers, running back, all that fun stuff. As a whole, not just starters, but rooms as a whole, who's got the most productive rooms and who I think, Bucs are looking pretty good. And then I'll do my training camp preview where I kind of just break down what I did in a written form, kind of the battles to watch, the position groups, all that. So we'll stay busy until training camp. But yeah, next week is mandatory minicamp, and then that's it. You thought the last couple weeks was dead. It is dead coming up here soon. So we'll keep you entertained over here at Pirate Parlay. I appreciate everyone tuning in. Again, I'll be back next week with my observations from mandatory minicamp. First look at Hassan Reddick on that defensive line. I no doubts that he'll be there. Mike Evans, we'll get our first look at Mike Evans. Although he's been there, we'll get our first look at him and so much more. We'll have a guest on next week as well, maybe to break down OTAs. Who knows what capacity they're in as a player, coach, or whatever, media member. You never know. We'll figure it out. But that's going to do it for us here at the Pirate Parlay Podcast here on the Sick Podcast Network. Appreciate everybody. Like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Everyone listening after. Appreciate you for listening, and we'll be back next week. See you guys later. Peace out.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Pirate Parlay on YouTube, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.